we're not going to spend a lot of time just doing kind of a quick wrap up here. But when you came in, you were given an attendee survey. If you haven't filled it out, I encourage you to go ahead and fill it out now. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear about the content. We'd love to hear about Chicago. We'd love to hear about the hotel. Look, at the end of the day, this is a conference for you to get better. We want to hear from you. So we've got $250 cash prize. We're gonna do the drawing right at the end of this thing. Must be present to win. We're also gonna do a free registration for this same fall conference next year. We haven't decided where it's gonna be yet, which is why we also want to hear from you. We're contemplating coming back to Chicago. How many of you guys like the Chicagoland area for this conference? Super good. The skyline in Chicago, for those of you who were at that VIP party on Monday night, that was just something. That was unbelievable. So anyway, do us a favor, take a couple of really quick seconds, fill this out. Juliana on our team down here, Juliana, stand up. You want to walk around and just start picking some of those things up. Also, put your name, your phone number, your email, all your stuff on there so we'll know who we can give the money to and who is eligible for a free registration next year for the NABD Fall Subprime Conference. So as tradition goes, we like to just take 10 or 15, 20 minutes to just do a wrap up. One of the things that we always want to make sure you have are some takeaways. We want to make sure that you've learned something this week that you can take back to your dealership, you can take back and put into practice, whether it's a new bent on collections, whether it's a new bent on sales, hiring practices, whatever it is. We really hope that you've been able to get something of great value out of this conference. So Ken, if you don't mind, you want to go ahead and kick us off and maybe give us a list of maybe the 2 or 3 big takeaways for you for this week that you may have learned.
Be happy to. First of all, I want to applaud all of you for staying to the end and how engaged you were during this whole conference. I can see that there's a real thirst for knowledge and to make your dealership better, and that's going to serve you in good stead. There's really just 2 or 3 things, as Steve mentioned, that I want to touch on. We tried to provide you with a lot of information here over the last 3 days, and we hope that you've made a lot of notes and are going to be taking those back. But as I've always said, it's not just what you learn here, it's what you do with what you learn here. And so some of my comments here in a minute are directed to what you do from here when you leave here. And the first thing I want to talk about is the workbook that you've got. This was very, very well done, and in the workbook, there's a resource guide. And some of you are just getting into the buy here, pay here business. Some of you have been in the buy here, pay here business. But in the resource guide is a critical decisions checklist. And I represent to you, this has been developed by a lot of the buy here, pay here Hall of Famers. I represent to you whether you've been in the business for 5 minutes, you're fixing to get into the business, as we say in Texas, or you've been in it for 50 years, this checklist is a roadmap to success in this business. It really is. So I would ask you to take a look at that checklist, no matter where you are in the business, and use it to evaluate whether you're doing all those things and you've covered all those in your operation. Also, as you look at the technology in this business, whether it's DMS, whether it's GPS, or whatever the technology that you're trying to implement, I encourage you to embrace it, first of all, because that's your future. You need to make investments today in things that are going to give you a return tomorrow, because we're in a tight margin environment. But I know that the first question, and sometimes the only question that I hear when you're looking at technology is, well, what's the cheapest? And the cheapest turns out to be the most expensive in some cases. So I would encourage you to use the checklist that's in that resource guide to help you think through all of the things that you need to know. Certainly price is a very important thing, but if you don't get answers to all the other things, then price can be irrelevant. The last thing I want to say is that as I showed opening day, losses are on the rise in this business. But you need to mitigate those with recoveries, and we've got a recovery checklist in here that would be helpful to you to mitigate your losses and to minimize them. Next thing I want to talk about is the first-timer reception. We had a tremendous number of first-timers here, and we're delighted that you came. We appreciate the investment you've made in being here, and we hope that when you leave here that you're going to get active in your state association. That's the first step. You need to get the specialized training and be compliant in your own state first, and then of course if you do that you become a member of NIADA, and if you're not in your state association, stay active in NIADA. I think what this organization is doing with its legislative effort in Washington, with the infrastructure that is developed, remember that working together we can make a difference. A combined voice is much stronger than the individual voices. And the next thing I want to talk about is capital. We had a financing fair here. The purpose of the financing fair is so that you could be proactive in developing new relationships. As I said in opening day, the worst time to go looking for capital is when you absolutely positively need it. So you need to be proactive and develop those relationships way before you either are selling your contracts or you're getting a line of credit. You need to be working today for the capital that's going to come tomorrow. And then lastly, the used car industry guide, which has just come out, has a wealth of information in it, including the benchmarks. And the only thing I want to say about the benchmarks is use them to evaluate your own performance. But I warn you, with all the regulatory action that's going on right now, if your business model and your performance, your markup, your interest rates, your payments differ substantially from those benchmarks, you better be able to explain why, because you may be asked to do that at the state AG level. So I encourage you to do that. So those are my takeaways, and again, I hope that you've gotten a lot out of this conference. It doesn't end here. I'm sure all of us and the entire NIADA staff are here to answer any questions after the show and ongoing. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for making an investment of your time. I hope that next year is your best year ever, and I hope that this show helped you get to that point. Steve?
Absolutely. And I want to echo what you said, which is I want to commend everybody who's here at this final session. You know, my dad always told me it's not how you start, but it's how you finish. So I appreciate everyone here being here with us at the finish line, because this is where you get, in a lot of cases, you know, the most out of the whole session. So, you know, I'm actually going to call on a couple of people here in a second because I want to hear from you, which is also why we want to do the survey. We want to hear from you. We think, you know, the agenda that we put together, as I mentioned in the opening session, we want the content to be so compelling for you that you look at the agenda and you're like, oh my God, I have to be there. I need to be able to take 2 or 3 days out of my business to work on my business. So we want the content to be compelling, and we want to put content together that you want to hear about, you need to see, and then just let us know what that is. And if there's something that maybe we missed this year that we can cover next year, we're happy to include it, but certainly give us your feedback. And Sean Peterson, who is our Senior Vice President of Legal and Government Affairs, does a great job of working with Ken and me and Chuck Bonanno and the whole team to build the agenda. So there's probably nobody more aware or familiar with all the content that was put together for this show. Sean, what were 1 or 2 of the takeaways that you had?
So you all are taking this away with you, right? So all of the presentations have been uploaded into the mobile app. I encourage you to go back and take a look at them. Steve mentioned that we've got a survey for you. We also have a survey in here on the specific sessions. I would encourage you to go into the mobile app, the sessions that you attended, give us a rating on them. We want to know, was the content good? Was the speaker good? Is that something you want to see in the future? What tweaks we can make that? So that's all in the mobile app. The other thing that I'll mention, compliance is not a dirty word. I live compliance. Well, we can debate that, I guess.
It's
but,
debatable.
But compliance is here to stay. And because it's here to stay, we've gone out of our way to make sure that we can provide you all of the tools that you need to understand the rules of the road. I would encourage you to go back to your dealerships, get on to NIADAcompliance.com, and check out this new partnership that we have with CompliNet, compliance management system that we've developed with them that will help you in training your employees, understanding what is expected from federal regulations, federal laws. It'll help your employees understand what's expected of them. You can set training modules for them to teach. They'll get tested on them. You'll have policies and procedures that you can print, and you can develop that culture of compliance, because whether it's the CFPB or the FTC, the state attorneys general, somebody, or private plaintiffs attorneys for that matter, somebody will always be there like a wolf trying to get into the chicken hen. So you need to make sure that you've got your compliance buttoned down.
I love it. So Justin, who is one of our 20 group moderators, does a lot of subprime, buy here, pay here, retail. He's walking around with a microphone, but I just want to take a couple of seconds to hear from you. Is there anybody that says, hey, man, there's one thing that I really loved that I've taken away, I'm taking back to my dealership, and I'm going to put into practice immediately? We would love to hear from you guys. Roy, you probably got some stuff.
Yeah, hey, I'm Roy from D&D Motors, a guy with the green hat, I guess. Being an older guy, I really don't understand social media, and I keep hiring people and tell them to fix it and do this and do that, and I don't know if they're doing it right or not. So I've kind of come to learn and ask questions, and some of my takeaways is I'm going to do a social media calendar when I go back. I'm going to look at this Facebook Live. I heard something about a Hammer Corp that'll load your inventory into Facebook. They're telling me Facebook is 93% of what people use on social media. I was listening to Ingram yesterday. I agree with him, train every day. I like his idea about putting a space for the customer to say, hey, this car is sold, park it right here. Hooked up with TaxMax. I'm looking at this Auto Trader. I've signed up for them to do some online advertising. I was always scared of it before because their prices are usually higher than everybody else. Got some good takeaways on the girl yesterday on employees, different questions to ask. Talking at this last thing here on this media stuff. Never thought about doing bird dogs with credit unions. That kind of interesting. Chuck, he gave me something here, go back and review my expenses, debt reduction. Yeah, I've got a lot of homework to do, so I've really gotten a lot of takeaways. Thank you.
So you haven't learned anything this week. That's disappointing. No, we really appreciate that. And that was actually one of the things that I actually had a kind of an aha moment with yesterday in the Always Be Recruiting session, hiring the right person right now for the right job. And I'll tell you what my aha moment is. With the association, we always, we do a thing in DC every year where we lobby on Capitol Hill. And part of the reason we do that is because we want to build relationships with legislators in advance of when we need them, right? So the worst thing you can do is go build a relationship with a legislator with your hair on fire, with a major issue, with a major problem in your industry, and then you go see your legislator who can help you. The aha moment that I had yesterday with the recruiting thing was the same kind of thing. It's like, if you're not planning for somebody to leave, like the last thing you want to do is be reactive when you have a general manager, or you've got a finance manager, or you've got your inventory manager comes in one day and says, hey, I'm taking a job somewhere else. What are you going to do? You can't be reactive. You have to have a plan in place. And the aha moment was creating a list of people that you would love to hire, that that go to your church, they're in your faith group, you play softball together, they're your banker, whatever it is. Develop a farm team, if you will, of people that you're building kind of soft relationships with. In the event somebody leaves, you've got somebody to kind of go to. So the aha moment for me was be proactive and have a kind of farm team available, so when a position does open up, you're not reacting, you've got a plan in place to fill that position pretty quickly. Because the other thing she said was, when somebody is looking for a job, 75% of people who get hired are passive employees, like people passively looking for their next opportunity. So when you find somebody who's passively looking for their next opportunity, and they're only on the market for about 10 days before they make a decision. So you got to strike while the iron's hot. So anyway, that was a big takeaway for me. I thought it was really cool. Anybody else in the audience? Gordy, I'm sure you got some observations.
I took about 90 pages of notes while I was here, and the thing I got the most out of was today at the round table. I picked up hints. I've had a business model that stayed pretty stagnant and has worked well for me since 1992, and I'm taking ideas on how we're going to change collection practices and different things that are out there. So it was really, really great.
Yeah,
But
that's
rubbing
good.
shoulders with fellow dealers taught me as much as got out of the classes.
So the other thing that I would say too that I was kind of an aha moment for me is, you know, because you're right, Gordy. I talked to a lot of dealers this week who've been in the buy here, pay here business for a number of years, and they're like, you know, you talk about this compliance stuff. What I'm doing, it works for me. It's always worked for me. Things are great. You know, I make more money some years than I do in other years. But, you know, what's changed? There's so much stuff that's changed. Forms change, regulatory compliance changes, legislative things change, doc fees. When I was a dealer in Florida, your doc fee on your bill of sale has to have very specific language that's tied to a statute. And if you don't know that, or if that changes year over year, you gotta be compliant. You gotta make sure just to avoid a class action lawsuit. You know, to Sean's point, plaintiffs' attorneys are looking for any opportunity they can to make a run at you, your book of business, your D&O policy, your insurance policy. He who has the deepest pockets is the biggest target, right? So you got to protect yourself. You got to protect your business. And if you've had tunnel vision for the last 5 or 10 or 15 years and convinced yourself that what I'm doing today is working today because it's been working for me for 20 years, you're probably more at risk than anybody else in this building. So like Sean said, go to the compliance thing. And the other half of that compliance relationship is they can have people come to your dealership and do a doc inspection. They can look at, you know, state by state, what do the forms say? What do they need to say? What do your forms say? How can we change it? How can we fix it up? How can we make sure you're as compliant and competitive as you possibly can be? Justin, did you have something
Steve,
to add to that?
we got a first timer here.
We have a first timer. All right.
Hello.
Hello.
My name
Welcome.
is Candace. I just want to say that obviously a wealth of knowledge here. I have genuinely enjoyed it. Like he said, on the technology side of things, that's where it's going.
Yep.
We already do, like as far as the online marketing and all of that, we do have the online credit apps. One thing that I'm anxious to see is like pulling the bureaus online to do that instant qualification, get you approved. What's that step in it? So I do want to do some research on that part.
Well, and I would encourage you to reach out to Equifax and some others. I know we have a relationship. NIADA and NABD have a relationship with Equifax where, Ken, I don't know if you want to talk more about how that is structured on the credit reporting.
Yeah, the challenge is that there used to be a minimum number of deals that you had to submit to the credit bureau, and with NIADA and NABD, we were able to get Equifax to offer a program where you don't have to have a minimum anymore, so you can report credit now even though you don't have a minimum threshold that it used to be, which was 250 or 500 deals, something like that. So that's important because you have to be on a platform where the consumer has the ability to respond to it as well. So definitely check it out. Also, more and more of the DMS software now is integrating with credit bureau information, and I think that's very important. Those are nuggets of things that we need to know about our customers before we underwrite them.
All right, that's good stuff, but that's great. Thank you for coming, and thank you for making a commitment to be here. I know it takes a lot to come out of your dealership for a couple days.
So this was a great session. I particularly got a lot out of Chuck Bonanno's collections workshop, also the recruiting workshop. I personally enjoyed sitting on one of the panels and hoped I helped dealers, and I look forward to coming back next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve-O. I remember a couple of years ago, we were at NABD, and I was having a conversation with Steve, and he's like, the thing I love about NABD is the fact that anybody and buy here, pay here is here. And so it's, and I think that trend is obviously continuing. So, all right, well, we know that we're standing between you and lunch, so we're going to take one more comment from the audience. Where's Justin? Do we have another first-timer? Here we go, over here.
I would say that one of the things that I'm taking back to make a constant change that I've shot myself in the foot is selling cars for a low cost just to attract people from a low-cost car. And I think I've shot myself in the foot because of that a lot of times. Now I see that there's a lot of other things that I could be doing besides just having a vehicle at a low cost.
Yep. Well, that's true, and I could tell you, when I was in the car business, I was a part of a JD Byrider franchisee group, and I was in Tallahassee, Florida, Leon County, 350,000 residents in Leon County. Juliana, come up. We're going to do one more drawing here in a second for a free registration for next year. But I can tell you, our dealership was the third highest volume dealership in the county. No other independent dealer sold any more cars than we did, and we were not the cheapest in the market, but we created value in our program, right? So price is irrelevant if you can create value in what you're selling. So I would challenge you, go back and find out what your value proposition is. And if the only thing you're doing is competing on price, you're probably missing the mark. You might want to go back and reevaluate that because, again, price is irrelevant if you can build the value. And sometimes it's about payment too, you know, build value in the payment, build value in what your program is, and you know, the rest will follow.
First of all, I really enjoy being here. I am a 2020 member of NIADA, but I have my children involved in the business, and I'm trying to work the exit strategy so they take over. But technology keeps changing, the product keeps changing, rules, regulations. Man, too many.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for coming. And with that, Ken, any final parting words?
Just thank you for coming. Travel safely. God bless all of you. Have a great year in 2020. Thank you.
The last thing that I will say, yes, is thank you for coming. Mark your calendars now for next June. The NIADA convention is going to be in June at the MGM Grand. June 14th through the 15th through the 18th. MGM Grand, mark your calendars now. Would love to have you. And travel safe, keep selling, and we'll see you next year. Thanks for coming.